Hello, I'm Citrus, and we're going to work on the high-grade Universal Century Full Armor Unicorn today. And apologies in advance for any background noise you might be hearing. It's kind of hot and smoky right now, so I've got my fan and air filter running in my room next to me. Normally I turn them off, but right now it's pretty insufferable, so it's going to be on while I'm talking. Today I'd like to talk about obsolescence. Specifically, the idea of obsolescence as it relates to our hobby of building plastic model kits. So, obsolete was a term I used to hear a lot, specifically to deride a kit for being bad, outdated, and just not worth anyone's attention. I also used to agree with this use of the word quite a bit, and I also used it pretty often myself, so some background about that. At the time, I didn't have a lot of money. I also didn't have a lot of access to Gunpla either, whether that's shopping online or buying it in person. My appetite to build was bigger than my ability to afford kits. Now, the opposite is true. It's not so hard for me to buy a kit, but it is much harder for me to commit to building it. So back then, it was my absolute top priority to make every single kit count. And what do I mean by that? Every part of the experience had to be maximized. So the image of the kit must be beautiful, the build must be dense, the accessories must be plentiful, the gimmicks must be numerous and interesting. It was around 2011 that I basically believed and pursued this the most firmly. I was about a year into my Gunpla journey by then, which point I had built up some knowledge about the hobby and was somewhat aware of how Gunpla technology and techniques have progressed. 2011 was approaching what I would call the peak of the golden age of Gunpla. At this time, if your priorities were only the four that I had listed earlier, then this was a period where it was generally true that newer kits were almost unquestionably better than older kits. And especially true when you're talking about any kits of the same subject and within the same scale. So we're maybe talking about going from a high-grade RX-78 to a real grade, stuff like that. The word obsolete would come up to describe an older kit having been completely superseded by a newer kit. But I've also seen cases where people will use the word obsolete to describe things that were not even remotely related to each other. Some people would use it to write off entire product lines just because something new had come along. I can't exactly say how prevalent this feeling was, but there was a sense of superiority around using the word obsolete, like a kind of snobbery that was lorded over people who choose to build or collect obsolete kits, as if they were too ignorant or irrational to make the correct choice with their time and money. This is a pretty pervasive vibe in a lot of other hobbies too. For example, in card games, there are aspirationally competitive types who basically will laugh at any kind of casual player because they don't pursue optimal play or whatever they want to consider is optimal play. In card communities, this basically describes spec sheet racers. So the kind of people who will harp on one or two specific stats like 0 to 60 times or residuals or whatever of their particular car of choice and say every single other car is completely obsolete and pointless because they don't excel along that specific metric. I came to dislike the word obsolete for two main reasons. The first is that's just really tedious to encounter. In a hobby with as low stakes as Gunpla, right? It's an almost meaningless argument to make, and it's almost always attached to any number of cliched faults that almost any kit can be guilty of. And to engage with these comments is pretty much a waste of your time. They're best ignored, but even so, just brushing them off takes just a little bit of energy, at least for me. And and just kind of annoying and unpleasant. It's kind of like seeing litter in a park or smelling something really stinky when you're walking around outside. And the second reason why I don't like this word anymore is because it's incredibly loaded. It's presumptuous. Like when we say obsolete, right? Obsolete means to be replaced, to be no longer useful, but useful by whose metrics? Remember earlier when I only listed the 4 priorities? Are there only 4 ways to enjoy Gunpla? Of course not. What if you really like stuff that's accurate to the screen image? What if you aim to challenge certain modeling skills? What if you prefer fewer accessories for a simpler build? What if you appreciate a certain kind of nostalgia? And so on, right? Bandai understands this. So whenever they market a new kit, it's very, very, very rare that they will specifically directly compare the new kit to an older one. And why is that? Well, because when both the old kit and the new kit are yours, saying one kit is better than another one isn't a winning strategy. And anyway, even if some old kits don't get reprints for years, possibly even decades at a time, most kits are never permanently discontinued. Can a new kit truly exceed an old kit in every aspect? I don't think so. Every kit uniquely captures a moment in history, technology, and time. A unique flavor and charm that no other kit has, even if they're of the same subject, scale, or product line. Maybe an older kit is a flavor you don't like, and that's fine. I certainly don't like all Gunpla. But we can't forget that our tastes are our own. To say that a kit is obsolete implies that it has failed some kind of universal benchmark when no such thing exists. And perhaps we mean to just say, I don't like it. That ought to be enough. Only expressing a preference without appealing to some sense of superiority, authority, or objectivity anchored to the idea of obsolescence. With this, at least in our hobby, I hope this idea can make its way out. And I think one of the things helping that along is actually how Gunpla has changed in the last several years. We're not in the golden age of Gunpla anymore. In a lot of ways, the progression of Gunpla has stagnated, or plateaued, I should say, put it more nicely. I think we can agree that there is a ceiling in information density that can be expressed through injection molded plastic models, which is to say there's a materials limit on how intricately a kit can be designed, a financial limit to how expensive a kit can be to make and buy, a dexterity limit to what the builder is capable of assembling, and an attention limit to how much focus a kit can command. Consider also how much prices have ballooned in recent years. We're at a point where older kits are no longer trivially cheaper than newer kits. I mean, just take a look at like the high-grade Sandrock Custom that just came out, which costs, I believe, about as much as the master-grade Sandrock when it came out, 10, 12 something years ago. When you take value, build, and expression all into consideration, with each year, it becomes harder and harder to definitively say that this year's kits are strictly better than last year's. A long time ago, I intended to make a video about web exclusives, and I never ended up making it because the post-COVID discourse was just absolutely flooded with all kinds of takes about web exclusives. And it wasn't just Bandai, right? Not just Gunpla. We're talking about Hasbro, Mattel, Wizards of the Coast, everything. I didn't feel like adding to the cacophony, but there's one point from that video that I want to mention here. That point is this. For the vast majority of Gunpla consumers, Bandai doesn't really need to make new kits anymore. Before you come at me, let me substantiate my claim, okay? The gradual stagnation of Gunpla kind of already kicks the point home. The room to innovate is closing. Bandai has explored a lot of different patterns to express a lot of different kinds of designs, and already those patterns work really well. Pushing the boundaries further has really only resulted in increasingly more expensive and niche products that have increasingly narrow appeal. And I'm sure plenty of people like the Perfect Grid Unleashed New Gundam. I do. But the fans who can commit the money, space, and time for one number far fewer. New, cutting-edge products will sell in some quantity for sure. That's the power of Gundam after all. But are they sustainable? That's hard to say. Now, if you don't find that convincing, let's step out of our shoes as Gunpla superfans for a moment. Each with our own wish lists for obscure mobile suits we'd like to see commercialized. Let's look at the whole product catalog. Just counting retail Gunpla releases since 2005. So no event exclusives, no web exclusives, nothing like that. There are over 1,000 kits that, yes, includes all product lines, minor retools, and recolors. And of course, not all of them will suit your taste, but the pool is still big. And you can look at it this way. I personally have about 180 or so kits that I haven't built. That's not to be a flex. I collected this over 16 years. And if I build 6 kits a year, which is already more than I've been able to manage for the last few years, that will take me 3 decades to finish. Your time to build is limited too. If you compare your own pace with a realistic number of kits that you'll build in a year, I'm sure you'll arrive at a number that is a lot less than 1,000. Which means plenty of the kits that you'll probably enjoy building already exist, even if Bandai doesn't make any new kits starting tomorrow. And by new, I mean like they don't make any more new products, not that they stop printing Gunpla completely, obviously. Now, if you don't want to do the math, you can also go through this exercise. So every month or so when the reprint announcements go out, just take a look at the list. Is there anything on the list that you've never seen before? Something that you forgot about that you find interesting? Great. That is a new kit you can add to your stash. If you don't see anything that catches your eye, then there's a good chance there's already something in your stash that you already have. So you do have something to build, and there's nothing to worry about. What does this exercise relate to the idea of obsolescence? If we can let it go, we can approach building and collecting with a more open mindset. It'll be easier for us to explore what already exists and perhaps discover new aspects of the hobby that appeal to us. Deepen our appreciation and satisfaction in our craft, fixate less on whatever may be coming next, and simply enjoy our limited, precious free time a little bit more. Whether you're building, browsing, or assembling your next cart, I hope this was interesting or helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.